Do you know how Donald Trump's mind works? Do you know what goes on up in that lizard brain? And if you do, explain his choice of the word vermin. Because it's not a random word, right?
You know, I don't know the inner workings of the man's mind, and that's a good thing. That I really cannot fathom the inner workings of his mind. I can tell you that he meets all the criteria for somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, and I don't think you need a degree to know that. I think you just need a copy of the DSM-5, and I think he meets all the criteria for antisocial personality disorder, i.e., he is a sociopath. Which are even easier to apply because there are fewer of them criteria. He's a pathological liar. He has no capacity for empathy or for remorse, and he has trouble obeying laws and rules. And there are a bunch of other things. So he's way into that category. What exactly goes on in his mind? I don't think anybody could actually tell you. You could just, and I don't know. And I think that to the extent he calls people things like he called a bunch of people just a couple of hours ago or 2 or 3 hours ago, deranged lunatics who deserve to be in mental institutions.
Projection there. Yeah.
There's a fair amount of projection that goes on. So, every accusation is a confession with him. And I think deep down, he knows that he is not the stable genius he professes to be. Yeah. And, Vermin, I mean, he learns, he has a limited vocabulary, but he learns a few good words there.
Okay. But see, that was my question. That was one of his words. Now, of course, your New York real estate, maybe the word vermin would come up, during the course of business, right? I mean,
but most people in New York say rats, right? They don't say pizza vermin.
You don't say vermin.
Right. Yeah. They don't say pizza vermin. They say, oh, there's the pizza rat, Okay. And so, all right. But I think, maybe it was that copy of Mein Kampf that was allegedly by his bedside date.
Well,
I don't know if that uses the word. I don't know.
Yeah, this is the puzzle for me because he's obviously not a deep reader. He is somebody who is not a master of the English language. I don't think he's ever been accused of being eloquent. And every once in a while, a word will pop up, and you could think that that's Stephen Miller off in the corner. His homunculus. Saying use the word vermin because it doesn't sound like a Donald Trump word, but it sounds like it's intentional. I mean, there's something in that lizard brain of his.
I think he knows that vermin are something to be eradicated,
to be exterminated.
He is exterminated, and I think that's why he likes the word. And I think that a lot of what he is saying is that he will do whatever he can to whoever he can who he thinks has crossed him, and that's his object in life, and that's completely consistent with his sociopathy, his psychopathy, his antisocial personality disorder, his malignant narcissism, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. They thrive on a couple of things. A malignant narcissist or narcissist sociopath, they thrive. They have this enormous need for praise. Narcissistic supply is what it's called. And then, if they don't get that, they become very angry and resentful, and they seek vengeance. And they seek to destroy that which they cannot control. And, the Bulwark is right up there on the list. And
we're on the list.
We're on the list.
So, George, since we're here, because I do want to talk about your new endeavor, the Society for the Rule of Law, which is important. But since we're here, I'm locked into the character and the mentality of Donald Trump.
Well, it's all interrelated.
Well, of course. So, George, when did you know? Do you remember the moment when and you looked around and went, "Wait, he's nuts. He's a malignant narcissist." Did it hit you all at once? Was it a gradual thing? Was it like a rash, or was it like a heart attack?
It was kind of like a rash and then a heart attack, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. It was something that developed over time. I mean, I should have known better in that, I was a New Yorker for all of my professional life, and I saw him in the newspapers. I mean, not that I paid close attention. I knew about him. I actually lived in one of his buildings, one of them that was actually mentioned in court today, which is, you know, unfortunately why we're here today. That's a whole other story. And, you know, I thought there was some normal aspect to him. Maybe he was a little, you know, we know all these egomaniacs on Wall Street and the legal in professions, and we, you know, there have always been some egomaniac politicians. But at the end of the day, I mean, let's get real. I mean, if you run for president, you become president, you have to have a big ego. You have to be, you know, you have to be somewhat narcissistic. But on the other hand,
people hoped he was in on the joke, right? That you know, that
right,
he would close the door and go, okay,
or that he, you know, the gravity of the office and the people around him would cabin him in some fashion. And, you know, there would be moments that would be cringeworthy because he is a bit uncouth and he doesn't really know much about government, and he can be an asshole like a lot of people, like a lot of politicians. But at the end of the day, you know, he's going to realize that he's elected to something that's just much bigger than himself, and that he loves the country. And, you know, I didn't conceive of what was to come. But as I watched him in early 2017, I was like, what is his fucking problem? Why does he doesn't seem to get it. He seems to get worse. He says all this crazy stuff and then he doubles down on it. He's, you know, in the Oval Office with the Russian ambassador and Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, and saying all this crazy stuff and doing all this crazy stuff, and the inauguration. You know, he's elected president of the United States. What difference does it make that your crowd might not have been as large on a rainy day as that of the first black president who was inaugurated on a bright and sunny day? I mean, who cares? You're president. It's great. Congratulations. How can you not take pride in that? And yet he, you know, he had to have the biggest. So it was like, well, there's something wrong with this guy. And I came to the conclusion that there was something sufficiently wrong about the guy that it didn't make any sense. You know, I was not going to function well taking a job in his administration, because sooner or later I'd get my ass fired. And
good call there.
You know, and having two members of the household in that fucking orbit was like, okay, I'm just not doing this. But I still wondered, well, maybe he can get it together. I don't know. I just, you know, it's better to sort of keep distance. But I kept watching. It's like, what is wrong with him? Why does he keep doing this? And over time, I started wondering about his mental stability. And I used to send texts to someone I know and saying, at some point I said, you know, maybe you should take him to the psych ward at Walter Reed. That did not go over well. Wouldn't
think so.
No, it didn't. But I also started reading, like, what is the issue? And I know there was this book that it turned out John Kelly brought to the White House one day about, you know, that basically talked about him being dangerous, a psychiatric case and a dangerous one. But the one article that I remember reading, and it all just sort of lit up for me at once, was there was this article, and I think I must have seen it sometime in late 2017 or early 2018. I'm not sure. It's hard to place now. I don't think I saw it when it came out, but it was an article by a woman who was, her name is Alexa Morris, I think, and she was writing for, I don't know if she still does, for Rolling Stone. And the article was, it was entitled, in essence, Does Donald Trump Have Narcissistic Personality Disorder? And what she did was she went through then 7 or 8 or 9, I forget how many diagnostic criteria.
Nailed it, one after another.
Yeah. Just one after another. And it's like,
nailed it.
And I'm like, okay, I need to start reading more about this. And I read the book that I mentioned that John Kelly had. Yeah. I started reading a bunch of stuff, and I came to realize this man is absolutely a pathological narcissist. And it occurred, you know, and I basically came to this conclusion sometime, I think in early 2018, because I remember talking about it with a journalist over drinks, like this guy's a he's a narcissistic sociopath. I remember it's telling it was actually Annie Carney of the New York Times. I came to that conclusion. I remember having a discussion with her about that. She'd just written something about me. And then it occurred to me, like, this is totally inconsistent with being president. Now, not that there aren't narcissistic presidents, but if you are so narcissistic that you cannot put anyone's interests ahead of yours, including that of the Constitution and the country, both of which you are sworn to protect, well, how can you serve? You're the ultimate, the framers viewed public officials as fiduciaries, and they viewed the president as the ultimate fiduciary, which he is, the ultimate fiduciary in the public realm. And you wouldn't trust this man to basically run anything. You wouldn't trust him with your money. You wouldn't trust him with your life. You wouldn't trust him with your kids. You wouldn't trust him with anything. And so that's why I sort of got into that. And it was just gradual over time. I think by the spring of 2018, I'd come to the conclusion that the man was not well. But the question is, well, what do you do about that? And I didn't say anything about it until, I guess, 2019. I started saying about it, and I basically proposed to the Atlantic that I would write something. I ended up writing a very, very long thing, and one day I just decided I'm just going to tweet out the
that was the tweet.
The diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, and say, hey guys, look at this. Recognize anybody? And that's how I kind of got into it.
Yeah, kind of no coming back from that. Okay, so since we're
among friends, right?
Okay, so this is a connect the dots moment because you and Judge Ludig and others and Barbara Comstock have put together this sort of so I would say the kind of an anti-MAGA Federalist Society about the rule of law, again, which I want to talk about, and because. And this comes at the moment, of course, when we have this full-on frontal assault on the rule of law by the former and perhaps future president of the United States. And before I get up to the current moment, I keep going back and forth on all of this. If we could have a joint podcast with, say, I don't know, if we could get Alexander Hamilton, James Madison here for the podcast, and say, okay, you guys were not naive. You knew that there were dangerous guys out there. You knew that there were would-be autocrats. You knew that there were sociopaths. They didn't have the diagnostic language for it, but they understood that in order for a constitutional republic to survive, you needed to erect bulwarks and guardrails against dangerous kinds of men, and they thought they had. Okay,
they thought they had.
Did they? Or is that? Or did they?
They did.
Or are we going through an experiment that shows that in fact they failed in enacting those guardrails?
Look, I think as bad as things got in January of 2001, the system held, and the checks and balances. I mean, it held because of the courts,
right?
Because of the two houses of Congress, because of federalism,
right?
So far. I mean, all of those things held. I mean, the framers understood that the dispersion of power, what was important to prevent tyranny. The one thing they got demonstrably wrong, I believe, was the Electoral College. I mean, it made sense at the time. I mean, you can't blame them. They were working with what they had to work with. But they thought, or at least that I forget which of them, I think it was Hamilton, wrote something about the Electoral College, and I forget the number of the Federalist paper. But he basically said, look, you can have some tyrant become governor of a state in substance, because, and when you read the description of what he was talking about, you think, just like Trump, right? Yeah. But he could never become president because to become president, you've got to earn the respect of the entire country through the Electoral College. Okay, and he didn't foresee the creation of political parties and the 12th Amendment, and then the fact that the states would all defer to the popular vote in choosing electors, and they got that part wrong. But they got the rest of it pretty much right. And I do think we owe the framers credit for creating a system that held and survive that we survived those 4 years. That said, I don't know whether we could we could do a rerun here. I don't think we can go 2 for 2, and I wouldn't try it.